Since there's been some rather hair-raising warnings of China and maybe even Russia themselves looking to militarize space, it seems to be something that Trump is at least aware of. And while he's the guy whose pitch to American voters is, I'm going to end all the wars, I'm going to stop the Ukraine war on day one, Israel, Gaza would never have happened if I was president, and I'm going to stop that too. That's his pitch. He's also talking at the same time of huge defense spending for America and, as you say, a kind of Iron Dome for America, because he's on his watch, it emerged that China had developed these hypersonic missiles, which are very difficult to defend against. They're so fast. America, and he of course was the one who revealed that America was developing hypersonic missiles themselves. That was top secret until he mentioned it in a White House briefing just off the cuff.
Now, the Times has learned that Donald Trump is considering ramping up his demand for military spending by NATO members from 2% to 3% of GDP as the price for continued American commitment to the common defence of Europe. And that is, of course, if he returns to power in November's general election. Let's talk to David Charter, assistant editor for The Times in the US. He's got the story. Hi, David.
Greetings, Henry, from Washington, D.C.
Fantastic. Good to talk to you. So where do we think this idea came from? Who's Donald Trump been talking to?
Well, this is very interesting, Henry, because, of course, we're now paying attention to Donald Trump's every thought and policy idea, because he is at least neck and neck, if not ahead, in all the opinion polls for November, despite everything. And what happened a few weeks ago was that the Polish President Duda met up with Trump in Manhattan, actually, because he was in town for some other business, the first ever criminal court case against a former American president.
Oh, yes, that.
That business. And President Duda is the guy who has been pushing this idea that NATO members should set a new target. So the target for spending 2% of GDP was set in 2014. He says, like 10 years on, there's a big old meeting of NATO in Washington this summer to mark its 75th anniversary, and he's going to push for an increase to 3% because Poland actually spends almost 4% of GDP. It's the highest pro rata spender in the whole of NATO, for good reason. It's got Ukraine on one border, it's got a bit of Russia on its northern border, Kaliningrad, and it's really felt for a long time extremely nervous about the threat from Russia, because where next after Ukraine, Poland feels in the firing line. Plus, Poland is becoming an emerging country in Europe to lead the discussion and the debate. This has become especially clear since Brexit, actually, that Poland wants to, lead the newer countries, the Eastern European countries. So he had a meeting with Trump, at which Trump was very taken with this idea, because America is one of only 3 countries in the whole of 32-member alliance that puts in 3% of its GDP into defense. And of course, Trump's long been saying, why should America be the one of the main payers towards European defense? That's his line. We've been through it all in Trump's first term when he was pushing everyone to get to 2%. And it's worth noting that a third of countries are still pretty far off 2%.
I'm just looking at the 11 who do meet it, including I was going to say,
all the threats by Trump to pull the US out. He actually, in closed doors, very early on in 2017, he told them that America would pull out of NATO as a threat. This emerged later, of course, but by then, a lot of the countries were putting a lot more money into military spending, including Germany, which had historically low levels for historic reasons. So it's not firm policy yet, but we met with a very senior person who definitely knows Trump's mind and was at or in the vicinity of the meeting and spoke to Trump after the Duda meeting, and this is where it's come from.
Right. And I know you've been looking at some of the other things that Donald Trump plans to do if he gets back into power, and you've laid it out beautifully in the Times, and some of them are to do with defence, ending the war in Ukraine on his first day in office, and building what you call, or what is being called, a state-of-the-art next-generation missile defence shield for the US. So how seriously can we take some of this stuff?
Well, some of it is clearly rather aspirational. It's something that has caught Trump's fancy, and I think that's because of the Iron Dome of Israel that he latched onto this idea of missile defense, which was, of course, previously associated with the Reagan presidency, when Reagan wanted to put up a bunch of satellites that would help. It was called Star Wars at the time.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember,
I do
Henry.
remember, yes.
But it didn't come to pass because America thought better of militarizing space. But since there's been some rather hair-raising warnings of China and maybe even Russia themselves looking to militarize space, it seems to be something that Trump is at least aware of. And while he's the guy whose pitch to American voters is, I'm going to end all the wars, I'm going to stop the Ukraine war on day one, Israel, Gaza would never have happened if I was president, and I'm going to stop that too. That's his pitch. He's also talking at the same time of huge defense spending for America and, as you say, a kind of Iron Dome for America, because he's on his watch, it emerged that China had developed these hypersonic missiles, which are very difficult to defend against. They're so fast. America, and he of course was the one who revealed that America was developing hypersonic missiles themselves. That was top secret until he mentioned it in a White House briefing, just off the cuff.
I do remember. Hey, and while we're talking about military, David, I mean, military intervention to control domestic protests, very timely, of course, with all the encampments in universities protesting about the war in Gaza, the pro-Palestinian protests. That's another one. I'm just looking at the list of other things. The shooting of shoplifters. The death penalty for drug dealers and child traffickers, an energy policy of drill, baby, drill, and introducing up to 10 new freedom cities and an anti-woke university. Now, that might be loved and lapped up by his base, but the elections are won in the middle, even in the States. So how do you think some of this is going to go down?
Well, do you know what? Two things to say about it, Henry. First of all, one is that a lot of this is... it's not pie in the sky so much as aspirational, like direction signaling, and it's never going to come to pass, partly because a lot of it would need funding, and the purse holders are Congress. You know, it has to be agreed in Congress to release the money for this stuff. As Trump found with his wall, he spent the whole of 2016 election saying, I'm going to build a wall across the border with Mexico. Congress would not provide the funding, so he wasn't able to build much of a wall. He found some money down the back of the sofa in the military budget, but he didn't build anything like as much as he wanted to. So there is that. But the other thing is, it's very clear talking to Trump people that he does not plan to fight the election from the middle, as he did not do similarly in 2016, and when he won. He's going to fight the election on his ground by trying to motivate every last voter who is tempted by Trump. So it's actually a growing pool of voters. He's been very successful. He's doing what Margaret Thatcher did, basically, in terms of motivating the blue-collar vote, the working class vote, to come out for the Conservatives. Whereas the traditional Conservatives don't like how far he's going. So he's losing a few, if you like, of the country club Republicans who find him appalling and won't vote for him, but he's picking up a lot more of the blue-collar vote, which is fed up with the Democrats and finds Trump more in tune with their thinking and a man of action. And they like America first. They like the protectionism. They like the pulling back from America in the world, ending the wars, all the spending on the wars. The money should be spent on America and the border. That's the main pitch.
And all this despite those problems in New York and in Georgia and all these court cases that are coming down the track. They still think, hey, he's our guy. That's the main thing, isn't it? He's our guy.
Oh, no question, Henry. I mean, whenever I speak to a Trump supporter, it's like he's not elitist. He's not a member of the establishment. He's given up so much to fight for us. He's given up his comfortable life as a billionaire with all his golf clubs and properties around the world. He could have just had an easy life. That pitch by Trump has really resonated, and despite the fact that he's popping in and out of the 500 richest people in the world as his social media company goes up and down like a yo-yo on the stock exchange, he is seen as on the side of the working class, blue collar American who's striving for a living.
Yeah, David, it's curious, isn't it? Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio. It's David Charter, Assistant Editor for The Times, joining us live from Washington. It's Henry